All right. So, welcome to episode 1 officially
Yes, the
of the
official one.
Logan and Faiez Show. That's
Yeah,
funny. It's funny to say, but I still like it. Last episode we talked about a lot of things, but I think it centered around integrity and like what that means to us. And we're not quite grizzled old men yet, but I'd say
I mean, I'm getting there.
we're seasoned. We're seasoned. I'm trying to live to
I
like
have the gray to show it, that's for sure.
I have
My
one.
gosh.
I might have like 2 or 3 on my head, but
I think I'm gonna be full gray by 50, which I'm good with.
I love
I'm
it.
good
I
with.
think it'll look good.
Yeah.
I think where we wanna go today is I was thinking about, like, my 15-year-old self,
Mhm.
and honestly, I think he would be so proud of who I am today. He'd
Mm.
be like, "Wow, like, that's the life you get to live? Like, that's what you get to do? Like, that's fucking dope, dude. Like,
Yeah.
cool, sign me up."
Yeah.
Um, Granted, like, I'm nowhere near where I want to be in terms of, uh it's not about grass is greener at a certain level of success. It's just I have so many ideas in my head. I have
Yeah.
such a vision in my head that there's so much I still want to do and be able to do. But in my day to day, like I love my work. I love what I get to do for a living.
Man, me
But there was
too.
so many lessons I had to learn to get to where I am today. And I know the same is true for you. So I
Mhm.
kind of want to talk about those hard lessons, those
Mm.
hard
Mm.
times. And honestly, in my view, there were many times in my life where I could have continued to go in one direction or course correct. And I'm very lucky that I chose to course correct because where I am now, I don't believe was guaranteed to happen. I could have continued down another path
Yeah.
and my life would have turned out
Yeah.
out differently. So, um,
It's funny you brought up your 15-year-old self because I was thinking about my 12-year-old self
mm,
the other day because I'm also going through another layer of healing process, but that's for a whole nother episode. Yeah, I think about a lot of course correcting that had to happen that I think really started to happen once I met Casey. But there was a lot of stuff in my 20s that I did not course correct, that I definitely was on a trajectory of self destruction, 100%. I can look back to definitely even high school days of self-destructive tendencies. And again, that's a whole nother episode of like needing to heal some of that. But I'm grateful for those course corrections. It's interesting how they come up, I think. I don't know what it was like for you, but if I'm being honest with myself, a lot of it wasn't conscious course correcting until I met Casey. I think
mhm,
it was easy to live a much more unconscious lifestyle as a single bachelor in my 20s in Austin. And at a time, when we talk about what our younger self would think, I actually thought when I was in my late 20s, early 30s prior to meeting Casey, like, oh, my younger self would think this life is amazing. Like, I'm running a personal training studio. I'm working for myself. I don't work for anybody else. I'm not living paycheck to paycheck. I'm a single guy in Austin getting to date and do whatever the hell I want to do. Go out at night, party, party hard at night. A lot of like 3, 4, or 5 times a week. Get up at 5 a.m. Go train all day. Work out like 3 times a day, and then rinse and repeat every
awesome.
night, every day, and then started to travel at that time. But it was, as I'm sure you came to find out, it was an unsustainable lifestyle.
How'd you find that out?
Crashes, like, and then just also recognizing that I wasn't living up to my potential. I think that's a hard thing for it was a hard thing for me to admit to myself that I wasn't doing the best I could possibly be doing because what I was doing was pretty awesome. So I think it's easy to lie to yourself, or in my case, it was easy to lie to myself that, well, I'm living a really good life. Like my business is doing good. I have a good home in Austin. I have enough money. Like again, looking back at that younger self, he'd be like, "Man, you're like living the life right now." But also I was destroying my body physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. It was destroying me. And it's funny because when you're in it, you don't know that you're in it. I even had friends at that time try to tell me like, "You don't know that this is going down a self-destructive path because my own ego is telling me, well, this is the lifestyle that I should be living.
Mm,
Like, why can't I be a single bachelor and have fun and
yeah, why
party and
not?
do all, like, why not? My
Yeah.
business isn't suffering. Like, that being the main thing. Like, my business isn't suffering and I'm not hurting anybody outside of myself. But then also looking back, I definitely probably hurt some people along the
Mhm.
way.
So
So
how did you know that you weren't living up to your potential?
I met Casey.
How'd she point that out for you?
You start to get a reflection. It was like what you talked about with Heather on episode 0 of, you get a woman that starts to ask you questions like, why? Why are
Mhm.
you doing these things? It's really that easy of a question that I had never really looked at, because my male party tendencies, or um, filling my lifestyle with distractions and things like that, I never stopped to ask, like, why am I doing these things? It was always justification as to why I'm doing them. But there
Mm.
was never a moment where, which later came along in therapy, of, well, why are you drinking? Outside of, oh, it's social and I'm having fun, what's the real reason? And so then you get a woman and a partner who actually asks you those things. And then you have to start being honest with yourself.
Did you ever end up answering the question why?
Yeah. Yeah. I think an evolution of the why. I think just like finding a why in your business or your purpose or things like that, it evolves over time as you start to understand yourself better. And so mine inevitably, when I look back at it now and the patterns and things like that, um, my why was, it started with probably lack of confidence, lack of purpose, lack of vision, lack of worthiness. And then a deeper layer was a coping mechanism with trauma from my childhood that I had buried deep, very deep. Then you look at another layer of using it as a crutch to socially engage, in which I'm telling myself, "Oh, I have social anxiety." Like that was the next illusion or a lie I would tell myself, like, "Oh, I have social anxiety, so I kind of need to drink to go to this concert or to go to this festival or to go out to dinner with 12 people, because I can't just sit there and have like a normal regular conversation with people."
Mhm.
Instead of looking at it like, "Well, why am I claiming to have social anxiety? Why do I feel this like vibration in my body when I'm around too many people, and that I have to grab for a drink or I have to grab for drugs or things like that to be calm, or whatever you want to call it, in that state, to be comfortable in that state?"
Yeah,
Like, why was I even uncomfortable in the first place? Is the
totally.
question.
I remember the first wedding that I went to after I stopped drinking and smoking. I was just completely sober, and I was like, "Am I gonna be able to do this? Like, is this gonna be weird? Am I
Yeah.
get?" I had to like give a speech, do a performance, like all kinds of stuff, and I was like, "Dude, I can't even. I'm not even gonna take a shot of anything. This is wild." And then on the other side of it, I was like, "Holy fuck, that was amazing!" Like
Yeah.
it was great. Like the
Yeah.
energy was still the energy, and like it was totally fun. And I was
Yeah.
like, it was a moment that lives in my DNA where I was like, "Oh wow, like life is
Hmm.
fine. Life is fine without a little bit of a social lubricant." And I'm 100% an introvert.
Yeah.
Um and it's very fun to be able to show up at social engagements now and do it as myself
Hmm.
versus needing, that little bit of something to try
Hmm.
to make me be more out there, for example. Like that's the thing for me. Like if you put me and Heather, my wife, in a room or at a party together, that the way we engage with that room is completely different.
Hmm.
She's like a fucking glowing light, like everybody, the crowd kind of forms around her, and she's like the center of attention. And I'm finding like one deep conversation at a
Yeah.
time, and I'm gonna leave with actually maybe one or two friends where I'm like, oh, that person was really dope. And she's like, yeah, I met like 18 people. And I'm like, okay, that's good for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like for me, and I relate to what you were saying completely, and it was the same thing. And it was, I don't know how gentle or ungentle Casey was with you, but it came to a breaking point in my
Mm.
relationship. Like I was stuck in a cycle of smoking weed, taking Adderall, and drinking. And I know in my mind, I remember telling myself, like, I don't want to do this tomorrow. And I would do it again.
Mhm.
Or it wouldn't even be tomorrow. It would be like, this is the last time today.
I
And I would
know.
do it again later.
I
And
know.
each time that I would tell myself that I didn't want to do it and then I did it again, it just like crushed my soul.
Yeah.
And
Just chips
eventually
away.
it completely chipped away. And then when you don't like yourself anymore, because that's all happening internally. I'm not telling anybody out loud that
Mhm.
this is happening. This is all happening inside my head, inside my spirit. And I just start to dislike myself. And when you dislike yourself, you start to dislike others. When you view yourself as, like if I don't have hope in myself, how can I have hope in others? And so it kind of become like this gray force. And like you, I was able to mask it super well. Like I was always on the surface appearing to excel, but inside I was falling short of my own
Mhm.
expectations constantly. And honestly, like when you live with somebody and you're in a long-term relationship, they start to see the things that the outside world doesn't get to see.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
Heather got to see how I was, falling short on my own commitments to myself and to our household repeatedly over and
Mhm.
over again. And she just got fed up. She was
Yeah.
like, I can't do this. And fortunately, I believe like the universe brought us together for a reason, is that she came from a family that has a history of addiction and
Mhm.
alcoholism. And she was like, no, dude, I know what this picture looks like. I'm not here for
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
we actually separated for a couple of months.
Mm.
Like I had to move out of the house. She was like, you can't fucking be here if you can't get your shit together. And initially I was like, well, fuck you then. And then I was like, but I know she's right.
Yeah.
I know she's right.
Yeah.
And, I could be, luckily, one of our mutual friends, Shay, posted about his experience on Instagram openly, his struggle with drugs and alcohol, which is why I'm willing to be open about my struggles with it,
Mhm.
because I just sent him a DM. I'm like, dude, I don't know how to stop. Like, what
Yeah.
do I do? He took me under his wing and he was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And I had to go down this journey of, you know, reaching out was step number one. Like I had to ask somebody for help. Up until then, I thought I could just get over it with my own
Mhm.
sense of discipline.
Mhm.
Something was wrong with me. I just needed to be stronger. I just needed to be more disciplined. I needed
Yeah.
to abstain. But really, the ultimate strength was reaching out to Shay and asking for help.
Yeah.
And so once I did that, you know, the hardest part of the process was laying down all of my fears on paper, all of my resentments
Mhm.
against people, ideas, institutions, anything. Like for my whole life, there's like 4, 5, 6 pages of stuff. And then I had to share that with him.
Mhm.
And once I said all of those things out loud, like I felt like all this weight leave my body.
Mhm.
And then I had to write a list of all the people that I might have hurt as a result of those fears and resentments. And then I had to go make amends to them. And like what I realized was that what I learned was that the solution to my drugs and alcohol problem wasn't a matter of discipline. It was a matter of the strength of my spirit.
Mm.
And the strength of my spirit wasn't going to get strong by going and sitting on a mountain and meditating. It was going to be doing those little exercises that I just
Yeah.
told you. And with each rep of those things, I got stronger in my
Yeah.
spirit.
Yeah.
And when you have to apologize to somebody or it's not really an apology, you just tell them like I was wrong for X, whatever I did.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that again. That fucking sucks. Like it's hard. You just like it's so much anxiety. And you're like, are they
I
gonna tell
know.
me to fuck off? Are they gonna be
Yeah.
like, you're a piece of shit? And I
Are they even
mean,
gonna remember?
are,
Do they even
are they even
care?
gonna remember?
Like
That's true. Like some people are like, "What? I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, but
I
sounds
know.
good, great. Like
Yeah.
happy for you." And others were like, "Yeah, you're a fucking dickhole, dude."
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's how I got my spirit strong. I haven't had drugs or alcohol in so many years at this point, and it's not just a one and done. Now that's like a thing every day.
Yeah.
If I round out the truth with you in this conversation, or if I'm mean to somebody later in the day, like I need to clean that up ASAP. And the more times I have to clean it up, I like I said, I don't want to have to clean
No.
things up. And so
No.
you just get better at not creating situations that you have to clean up. I
Yeah.
never get perfect, but I know how to clean how to make it better right away. And like I know that I'm fucking good as long as I'm doing those things. It's incredible. I'll be around my um friends, family, and sometimes I'll be like, is it okay that I'm you know, having a beer or whatever. Like my dad's very sensitive about this.
Mm.
He's like, are you okay right now? Like maybe my brother's having a beer or whatever.
Can I ask you, do you think, because I always wonder, because I don't consider yours and mine's journey is I think there's one slight difference,
Totally.
and that mine just sort of fell off. I just stopped drinking, stopped smoking. It definitely ran parallel with my spiritual journey, but I never had this moment of like, oh, I'm an addict. I need to get into recovery. Not saying this was your journey, but like there was never that moment of like, I have to get sober. I just recognized I needed to start strengthening my spirit. And as I did that, that just naturally went away because it was no longer serving me. It used to, my vibration and frequency was so low that drugs and alcohol used to bring it up. And then it got to a point where I tried it when I was further on my spiritual journey and it brought it down. I could feel like my consciousness just like shrink basically. And I was like, this doesn't feel good. I'm never doing that again. So I wonder, would you consider yourself an addict or
1,000%.
You just,
1,000%. I don't even fuck around and need to make myself feel better by not saying it. Like if you put a joint in my mouth right now, as soon as we leave this studio, I'm going to find another one.
Okay. That's fair. All right. That's fair.
That's just what it is.
Did it ever go further than weed?
Oh yeah.
Adderall.
I've done everything under the sun.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? I don't think I knew this about you.
No needles, but like everything. Like a part of me is a little bit, you know, grateful that I did it. Like I got it all out of my system, the hard stuff like in college. And I have no curiosity about it whatsoever anymore. And I probably would have been fine if I didn't do it. But
see, and that's why I wonder. That's why I ask if you would label yourself or identify as an addict. And I think we also know the dangers of identifying as something.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Do you get where I'm going with that?
I do 100%. And I think like, it's just about how much value you get out of it. Like some people, honestly, it's all about the actions at the end of the day, right? Some people are like, I'm not an addict. And then they continue to partake in the thing. It's like, maybe there's a little bit of value in just go ahead and identifying with that behavior right now and take the steps that you need to. And others, it happens like you, where it falls off. Honestly, I don't know what the difference is. I just know for me, it doesn't bother me to recognize that within myself, and the benefits outweigh the cost. Like I feel no downside in understanding that about myself. And I'm like,
I would say I definitely had an addiction for 2 years.
Sure. Tony Robbins is big on this. He actually like hates, I don't know if he hates, I won't put words in his mouth, but he talks about like, he doesn't agree with the label of being an alcoholic, for example, which is like pretty fundamental if you're, you know, working a program or whatever. Right. And I don't know. It's just, to me,
I like how you put it. It's where's the value in it?
Yeah.
Is it bringing you value, or is it bringing you, is it causing self-worth problems or things like that? You know?
And it doesn't for me. I'm good with that. But like, we're in Austin, man. There's so many people that are like, I guess it's called sober curious now. And I'm like, dude, power for you. Maybe you don't need AA or NA or MA or whatever version of it that you need. And you need a lighter touch, and
I mean, as is all things, I think there's just a spectrum.
There's a spectrum, and I'm all good with that. I think a little bit of part of my identity, particularly the weed part, I was like, am I going to lose my creative edge?
Man, I thought that same thing. Because I used to definitely get into a nice flow with it.
Totally.
You know? Like where my mind would go and the things I would want to create and the things I would do. But then the problem was it was all ideas that never got manifested.
And then I would be like, look at Seth Rogen, look at Snoop Dogg. They were able to make it happen, and they're high all the time. Like, this is fine.
There's anomalies for sure. It's like, 2 guys out of millions.
Totally. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's fine for people. And I think at the end of the day, it comes down to like, is it interfering with the things that you want to do and who you want to be? Right. And once I got honest with myself and wrote all my shit down and looked at it and said it out loud, I was like, man, this is getting in the way of who I want to be.
Yeah. That was the same thing with me. It was just getting in the way. It wasn't serving me anymore. It wasn't doing any good. It wasn't bringing any value.
Yeah, so my life is, I mean, it's like probably one of the most,
Do you ever think about it anymore? Like
yeah.
really?
I mean, like I live downtown, dude. I smell weed every weekend. I
Yeah.
see partying and drinking constantly, and every now and again, um, the thought will flicker across my mind. I'm
Mm.
like, man, what if I'm 85 and I'm just rich as fuck? Like, can I just sit on my ranch and just smoke a little blunt?
When I
Like,
listen to Dax, because Dax is a recover, like he's an addict.
okay,
And so on his podcast, he'll like freely and openly talk about it, and he says the same thing. He's like, "Could I just at like 70 decide to start having a beer again or something?" Because he saw one of his old, I think it was like his old girlfriend's dad's, who was an alcoholic, start to casually have a beer at 70, and he was like completely fine.
yeah.
He's like, "Could I do that? Could I just, start drinking again or have a joint?"
Yeah, my
You know?
father-in-law is the same. Is a he was an addict, alcoholic, and then when he got into his 60s, 70s, he started being able to enjoy a glass of wine or whatever, and it scared the fuck out of the family.
Really?
But he's cool. He's chilling. He's fine. Honestly, I have no idea. Like, it's
Yeah,
a
who
nice
knows?
little thought experiment, and then I gotta let it go because at the end of the day, I know I'm not doing that shit today.
Right.
I got way too much. Life is too good,
Yeah.
and I think at that time, like, I don't know, it's maybe fun to daydream a little bit, but it's like, I hope I'm still living a rich life at that age where people depend on me. And
Right. Right.
you know what? When I was in the middle of it, like the thought of people depending on me, like made me just like go like this because I
Mm.
couldn't depend on myself. I was like, how are people supposed to depend on me? And now I'm like, I love being able to be sturdy enough
Mhm.
where the people around me can depend on me. Like that feels good as
Yeah.
fuck.
I love being reliable.
I love being reliable
Yeah.
because it's
Especially
like
now that I have kids, it's not even an option.
100%. I mean,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, it is an option, and a
Well,
lot of
yeah,
people
true.
take
True.
that other option and they
Yeah.
don't be dependable for their kids. So, like, for you to be able to be someone that your kids can rely
I
on is
truthfully
huge.
I don't understand how parents can drink, even casually. And this is no knock on any parent who still drinks. I have nothing, no judgments against anybody that drinks or parties or does do your thing. But man, I can't imagine waking up in the morning with any sort of like mild hangover, even
Ooh, I don't
with
know.
kids.
I
Oof.
look at I look at the close people around me, they're all very similar to you. Like, Heather doesn't identify as an alcoholic, but she just stopped drinking at some point. She was like, "It just doesn't make me feel good."
Yeah.
My like some people in my family, oh, we used to party back in the day. They don't identify as an alcoholic or an addict, but they don't do that stuff anymore because they're like same thesis. Like, life is good, and I want to
Like,
be
yeah,
able to.
exactly.
I want to work out and feel good. I want to be active and feel good. I want to like participate in my community and
Hmm.
feel good.
Hmm.
Um,
Let me circle back real fast. What are the layers that you found that contributed to your partying and drinking?
you want to go down this fucking deep dark cave? I have. I think fundamentally what first comes to mind is like I was shamed and scared.
Hmm.
Um
Of
and
what?
I get into this a lot. Like, I think that there's value in trying to understand why, but you can never definitively answer that question. So I can explore my childhood and try to understand where some of that stuff comes from. And like, I spent a significant part of my childhood growing up in Colorado, and I was like the only kid that looked like me. It was like very pretty much small town, country, military, and a bunch of white people. There was like a handful of black kids, and then there was me. And I dealt with a ton of racism. There's
Mm.
just a ton of racism. And I think I was never okay with it. So I got into fights a lot. I was constantly getting suspended. And as I got older, it felt overwhelming. I think subconsciously I felt like I was being looked at as an other.
Mhm.
And so I just started smoking a lot to try to, I guess, maybe mask some of that anxiety, perhaps.
Mhm.
And then I also just like a part of my identity was like I'm the fuck it, I'll do it guy.
Yeah.
Um,
I was the if no what did I used to say? It's no fun if everybody isn't having fun. So I was always the one who was bringing everything to the party. I was like, I will share all of this with you
Yeah.
because I don't want to do drugs alone. So
Yeah,
here
I
you
don't want
go.
to do drugs alone.
Here, come
Come on,
on.
bro. It's fine. It's
Come
fine.
join the dark side.
Come join the dark side. I was that
Yeah.
guy too. I
Yeah.
was always trying to get my friends fucked up.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Maybe I'll think about that a little bit more so I can come with a good answer next time. But yeah, I had a laundry list of fears and anxieties and resentments that I had to work through. And it was, I mean, it was a whole list. Like it was against my mom and my dad. It was against the school system. It was against the news. It was against very specific people for very specific incidences. And the thing is like the power of actually writing things down and then saying them out loud is like they lose their power. Otherwise, they just keep bouncing around
Right,
in your head
right.
and your memory, and like every little thing that happens in a day that replays in your head at some level, and you're just like stuck in
You're
this.
stewing
You're
in
stuck. You're
Yeah.
stewing in it. You don't even know it anymore. You just think those are your thoughts,
it. Yeah.
and it's like I. That's why I just love when I feel a little bit of disturbance. I just open up my notes app. And I just write down what I'm feeling really, really quickly, or what happened, what I'm feeling, and I'm like, man, that's fine. That's that doesn't need to have any more control over my thoughts anymore. Now that I can see it, that doesn't matter. Move on.
Yeah.
Or I can do something differently about this, and I'll just I'll own my part. I'll take responsibility for my actions. The other person is responsible for how they show up, but I feel good about how I'm gonna handle it, and I might have to do a hard thing, and cool. I get strength from that, and here we go. We're
Yeah.
good. We're good to go. So,
I remember you telling me at the beginning of Prep to Your Door, you weren't sober. So can you share what that was like transitioning to sobriety while running the business? What did you see happen in the way you showed up for the business, or the way you showed up for Heather, or your creativity, or your leadership skills? Like, what are the big things that you started to notice?
the thing is on the outside, I don't know that anybody could tell
Right.
when it happened, and when I was in the pits of it, I don't know that anybody could tell, but I know I could tell. I know that my wife could tell, and I wasn't a complete shit show before I made the decision, right? Like we were able to generate a certain level of success, and afterwards we were able to generate even more success. So I hate to say that it was like just cause and effect. Right? Like I got sober and everything got fixed. It was still like a long journey ahead. Like life is still life, and there's still lessons I had to learn. But when hard things happened, I was able to stay in those moments and work through them and learn the lessons that I needed to, rather than go and mask what was happening by getting drunk
or escape.
Yeah, and it's not like I was going and like sitting in a ditch. I wasn't that far gone. It was like, oh man, this is super stressful. Let me smoke a J, or let me pop a pill of Adderall so I can power through this thing.
Right.
But like there's so much. I'm reading a book on mastery right now, and one of the lines is like, as quickly as a thing comes is as quick as it goes, right? And there is value in sort of carving the neural pathways in your brain, because the longer and harder it is for you to come by a reward, then the more durable it is when it does come to you. And that's why I have such a sense of confidence that I could fail in whatever I'm doing now, but I know that I could achieve it. I can achieve it again, because I've actually developed my craft. I've actually developed my skills. And at the end of the day, I know I can go out and do it again. And I was not able to do that with as much depth and strength and ferocity and commitment if I was, kind of laying on the couch and like in la la land in my head. And even though it felt good and the ideas were fun, I wasn't getting as
There's no action
powerful.
being taken.
Yeah,
on
the
that
reps weren't as
discipline.
powerful. Just
Yeah.
period. Like that, they're just saying like practice makes perfect, but there's another saying that says perfect practice makes perfect.
Right.
That difference, that's the delta between good and great. And I'm obsessed with bridging that gap now. Like I used to be a kind of guy that we've talked about it before. Like, I could get by on very little effort,
Mhm.
and it appeared mostly okay to most people, except for the true badasses. The
They know.
badasses could look at me
They
and be
know.
like, "You're a fucking lazy motherfucker,
Yeah,
aren't you?"
you could be doing so if you just put like 20% more
Totally.
effort, you could be doing so much.
So much.
Yeah. I think about that too of it's funny you bring that up because that's exactly what I was thinking about talent taking us so far and actually not working hard on that discipline. And mine can go back even to like high school playing sports and things like that. I never worked that hard on my craft. And truthfully, I'd never seen anybody or I didn't have mentors or people to look at that I was able to witness somebody working so disciplined at their craft, you know? And it's not till you actually see somebody do that or you somehow decide to build that in yourself, whatever that comes from, whether it's recognizing that you're not actually doing it
Totally.
or simply just finding a craft that now you're willing to be disciplined and go after and try to perfect and try to become the best at.
Okay, I wanted to ask about how you attracted Casey into your life.
Man, I was not into any sort of like manifestation at that time or any sort of vibrational attraction or understanding my own frequency or vibration that I was at. Or honestly, I wasn't even at a place of, I know exactly what I want in my partner because truthfully, I didn't know myself at that time. I thankfully attracted Casey into my life. I think somehow the universe knew that I needed her in a way. I think it was much more cosmic than I really knew to understand at that time. What I did know is I had gone through a couple years of dating and let's be honest, being a whore for a couple of years and bouncing around some girls that I did not treat very well. That I knew I didn't want to do that anymore. I was at least reaching a point in my life where I knew the things that I didn't want to do anymore. We talked about it in episode 0, I think a little bit of finding out what you don't want to do. And I just didn't want to date anymore or bounce around from girl to girl. I started to travel a little bit at that time and I'd went on a trip by myself with a couple of clients, but essentially I went by myself. And I was like, man, this would be nice to have somebody to share traveling with. Like, I think I started to recognize it, or at least the first seeds were being planted of, oh, it'd be nice to share this life with somebody. Like, all of a sudden, my basic needs were pretty well taken care of. I wasn't just surviving. I was able to start thinking about a life potentially with another person and sharing it and doing things with them. And truthfully, even at that time, the masculine side of me was definitely in this phase of, well, I have money now. So can I do fun things with a girl? Or do I want to just continue taking out random girls and not have any substance to it or any relationship or any memories or things like that? So Casey just kind of, I hate to say it, fell into my lap in a way. You know, a client at that time introduced us, and it was actually her vision she said, hey, she told Casey, she's like, I think you and Logan would get along. Like, and truthfully, that person at that time, I don't even know how well she knew me. We make the joke that I would take 0 life advice from this person, and somehow she got me and Casey right at that time, even at a phase where Casey isn't who she is today, and I'm definitely not who I am today. We've grown a ton together. We've shifted and changed and evolved and went through so many different iterations of who we are. And talk about hard times. I mean, we had moments where we potentially, we had a moment where we looked at each other and was like, do we just want to call it? And it was very like unemotional about it. We definitely were just logically like, should we just not continue on with this marriage? Would it just be better for us to go our separate ways at this point so we're not too deep into it? And that's the struggle that comes with partnership and growing and marriage that if you're individually growing and one person isn't, or the pace might be very different, that it can put a very big gap in between you two. And if you're not
Mhm.
willing to recognize that gap, talk about that gap, work with that gap, or in my case, I needed to, for lack of better terminology, I had to catch up. Like she stepped into her queendom, into her womanhood before I stepped into my manhood,
Mm.
which is good and bad in a way. It was good that, she was doing her thing and that was great. It was bad for my ego in that I was like, oh, this isn't feeling right. I need to step up. But also at that time, I didn't really know how to do it. I had nobody to look up to, no positive masculine influence in my life. And then that's when a spiritual journey started. But I wasn't calling in Casey. I wasn't like calling in this relationship when it happened.
Totally.
It
Yeah.
just happened. And I at least had sense enough to know, oh, this is something special.
Mhm.
I can't let this one go. Like she sees me. And then even in those first few years, she sees me for the faults and definitely had to push me,
Mhm.
but she accepted me for all those things.
To a point.
To a point. Right. To a point.
And I think that when you get seen in a relationship is when a lot of people go one of two directions.
Right.
Because being seen can be really scary, and a lot of times you want to turn that record. Look at you, you're imperfect, yada yada yada, and that leads to the breakup of the thing. And I think what you were saying, as I think about what makes a strong relationship, I'm surrounded by fuckboys, right? Like we all are at different stages of our lives, and if I look at the people that ended up in sturdy relationships and those that didn't and haven't, I mean, it's a pretty clear pattern to me. It's like we all start out as imperfect, but we're attracted to each other for certain qualities. You spend more time with each other, and then you become aware of the bad qualities.
Mm-hmm.
And the relationships that work the most are, like you said, the people that are growing individually that allows them to then grow as a couple because you need to know how to grow.
Right.
And there's always, I mean, I have no doubt that you have future challenges ahead of you, and I have future challenges ahead of me in both of our marriages. But at least in my relationship, we have the utmost confidence at this point because of a number of past experiences is that when we come to a head, like in my sobriety journey and the many other times where there's a fork in the road, we choose to go deeper
Mm-hmm.
and we try to figure it out and we hang in there, not sweep things under the rug. We look at the situation for what it is and say, okay, I need to get better here. I was wrong here, and she'll do the same
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you just get, and so the next time it happens, it's gonna suck. It's gonna be fucking annoying. I'm gonna be fucking pissed off. But the next day I know we're gonna sit down and we're gonna
Right.
be like, okay.
I mean, Casey and I just got into it the other day and it was tough, but there was something that needed to be released on both of our sides and recognizing that. The funny thing is whichever direction, when you talk about that fork in the road, if you decide to go deeper or if you decide to veer off and split and argue more, either direction is going to be painful. So
Mhm.
why not just take the one that takes you down deeper and
Pick
takes
the
you into
pain,
a
yeah.
stronger relationship and makes you grow more together and helps you evolve and helps you progress in your own awareness, in your own consciousness, in your own capabilities of this like beautiful marriage that you're creating. It's going to be painful regardless. So why not do the stuff that
It's
makes
like
you better?
roots. It's the
Yeah.
roots of a relationship. Each time there's a conflict, how you handle the conflict, it just deepens the roots. And
Right.
the next time the wind blows, you're not worried about the tree getting uprooted. You're like, we have strong roots. I know we can withstand this. And it may not be conflict between the two of you. It may be fucking life.
Yeah, it's just life. Yeah.
There's all kinds of shit that's happening all the time. And it's just like, for me, life is so much better to get through it with somebody who I'm like, this is my fucking person.
Yeah.
And like, we can lean on each other to get
Yeah.
through whatever is going to come our way. Like, I fucking love having her in my life. And I had to earn that shit.
Mm-hmm.
I had to become somebody worthy of that partnership. I had to become somebody worthy of that level of commitment from her because I put my demands on her as well. Like, I have to grow, she has to grow. That's a commitment that we made to each other.
Everything that you want in a relationship or everything that you want from your other partner, just do it yourself
Totally.
and it will be reflected back to you.
And if it's
That's what makes a great partnership. You said it. It's like as long as you have your own commitment to growth, the other person will see it and they will do it with you, or they won't, which then will tell you, "Hey, that's not the one for you." And
totally,
that's totally fine,
it's totally fine.
you know? But just stay committed to all the things that you want to see in a relationship. It's really that easy.
100%.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
know,
the women in our life.
yeah, it's great.
Um,
Okay, I wanted to read this to you. So, okay, read it quickly. So, this is in a book that I was reading. Because in the context is essentially that the question is, are there more problems today or are there more perceived problems? Like, is life actually better these days? Let's say in our setting, we're living in Austin. Like, do people in Austin, Texas have more problems today than we did in the past? Because, you know, depending on which podcast you listen to or what news you tune into, it may seem like the world is turning to shit. And so this is the passage, and I thought it was interesting. It said, for our most primitive ancestors, life was a constant struggle, entailing endless labor to secure food and shelter. If there was any free time, it generally was reserved for rituals that would give meaning to such a hard life. Then, over thousands of years of civilization, life gradually became easier for many, and with that came more and more free time. In such moments, there was no need to work the fields or worry about enemies or the elements, just an expansion of hours to somehow fill. And suddenly, a new emotion was born into this world: boredom. Alone in our minds, we can imagine we have all kind. Oh, yeah, that's another passage. Boredom.
oh, 100%. I think boredom lends itself to problems. I hesitate to say this because I don't want to trigger people and I don't want to invalidate people's feelings or emotions. But I think a lot of our depression and a lot of our perceived problems in the world today are from boredom.
Yeah,
Our minds are bored.
totally.
And if you have nothing to do, or if you're just being distracted all the time with your phone or with partying or with girls or with porn, I'm speaking more on the man side of things here. Yeah, your mind's going to start creating problems because it is bored. And guess what? Problems mean you have to find solutions. And so it gives your mind something to do.
Yeah.
When you start to get out and do things, when you get creative or you go work out or you fill your day up with stuff, your mind doesn't have the time to create perceived problems. And I'm not talking about real actual problems. Like if people are trying to come up with their rent and they have to work 2 jobs and they're struggling right now. Yes, that's definitely problems. I'm talking about just certain mental health, quote unquote, crises that are really just more so about boredom.
But even the paying the rent, and if you have double jobs, like I think about that, and I think, is that a problem or is that just life?
It is partly just life. I hesitate to label anything a problem too. Like what is
Exactly.
what is a problem? Define it. You know?
That's what that's kind of where
Is
I'm
it a
getting to,
challenge?
is like, okay, look, there's certain realities in place, right? Like some people are born with, you know, literally billions of dollars. Some people are born with billions of dollars, and some people are absolutely not born with that. And the thing that I see a lot of people get caught up in, and I spent a lot of time getting caught up in, were like the injustices of those two realities.
Yeah.
And specifically, as it relates to my story, were the injustices of race. I have dealt with the utmost bullshit as it relates to race, from person to person and at the institutional level. Like I've had weapons pulled on me. I've had somebody put a gun to my head and told me to go back to where I came from. Like that shit is fucking terrifying and enraging. Like my body was full on shaking with adrenaline, and I just wanted to fucking smash this fucker. I was like, who the fuck are you? Where do you want me to go back to? Fucking Houston, Texas? Stupid motherfucker.
Yeah.
So there's that, and then, you know, run-ins with the police when we had our business. I would come out of the warehouse. We tripped the alarm one time, and a police officer saw me outside. I wasn't looking fresh to death. I had sweatpants on and my beard. like, what are you doing here? Like, it was very cautious. And then Heather came out and he got super relaxed. And I'm like, what the fuck? You needed to see a blonde hair and blue eyed lady to feel relaxed around me? Like, that doesn't make me feel good. That makes me want to smoke a joint. Right? That makes
But
me
you
want to
also
smoke a
know
joint to
that
calm
literally
down.
has nothing to do with you.
And that's what I'm saying. Exactly. And I had to, dude, me and Heather, we had to go to therapy over like being in a mixed race relationship, because I would take it out on her. I'm like, you don't fucking get it. Like, the world is different for you because you're white. Like, people don't look at you a certain way. People don't treat you a certain way. And after a while, like, I was taking out all my heat on her. And I had to realize that, okay, some of what I'm saying is true. Like, you know, some of what I'm saying is true. And there are probably other times where I don't know if it's true or not.
Right.
I don't really know if a person is looking at me funny or not.
You don't know if you're looking at it through your distorted lens.
I'm probably looking at it through a distorted lens because certain experiences were real, but I'm carrying those experiences now into all my experiences. And I'm like, dude, this is fucking weighty, bro. Like, I don't want to live with this lens all the time. And I have a lot of black and brown friends that now have decided to take that worldview instead. They're like, you know what? A lot of this stuff does piss me off, and I've experienced it personally, but I'm not going to carry that with me in all of my experiences.
Because it's just poisoning your experiences. It's not poisoning anybody else's
up my
experience.
own life.
Yeah.
I'm just fucking pissed off
and
all the
guess
time.
what? There's nothing is 100% good or 100% bad in this world. You know, of course there's going to be injustices. Of course there's going to be things that don't go great. Of course there's going to be people who are quote unquote racist, or maybe they've just had experiences that opposite of yours or different than yours in a way that because of their experiences with a black person or a brown person, that now the next time they come into contact with one, they're bringing that lens into the experience as well. And I think that's where the compassion part comes in, of understanding the other person's life experiences. I can't stand it when we talk about veganism or carnivores or this or that, or talking about what people eat. It's like, if somebody grew up on a Texas ranch and their life has been eating meat, what in the world are you thinking going to judge them saying, oh no, you should be a vegan. Yeah. You should be a vegetarian. Like, no, their life has been meat, period.
And you're not going to shame somebody into making a different decision, which is what I was trying to do with Heather, right?
Yeah.
I was trying to make her feel all the guilt of her potential ancestors. I don't even know. I don't know what her ancestors were up to. I can maybe make some bets on what side of the line they were on, but like, I don't fucking know. And it's not her fault.
I know.
So the same thing with like, the vegan carnivore, like, dude, people get so worked up about dietary preferences. And I get it. I get that veganism is. I have a friend who is a full on vegan, and he's like a vegan influencer, and his wife is not. You should see the amount of vile heat that he gets in his comments because he's married to a non-vegan. They're like, would you sit at the dinner table with a rapist?
Oh my gosh.
Or a murderer? And he's like, dude, I'm getting so fed up with this. And I'm not hitting on vegans. It's just y'all are an easy example. I had a vegan food business for 7 years. Relax. We're all good. Yeah. Peace, love. It's all good. But the point is,
do what works for you.
Do what works for you. And like, my goal in life is to meet people where they're at. Yeah. You know what I mean? I love diversity. Diversity is probably naturally hard for human beings, right? Because we like to look for the anomalies, and you want to pay attention to what is different in the situation. But the beautiful thing about being around people that are different than you is obviously you get to learn about all the different ways that you can do life, but that is challenging as well, because then your sense of the right way of doing things gets challenged constantly. But it's not about right and wrong. It's right. It's like, I can borrow what I want and make up my own picture of how I'm going to live this life. And that can be creative, and, or you can be like, dude, I'm super happy that works for you, but like, that's not it for me.
Right.
I'm good. I'm good over here.
I think that's what I've had to start to more so in the last like 5 years or whatever, coming to a place of really actually wanting to understand people instead of judge people. And then also recognizing that it's not so black and white on the right and wrong.
It's pretty hard.
There's so much gray and so much nuance and so much that works for me that doesn't work for you. And what do I even care? Like, how much energy does it take to sit there and try to tell somebody they should be a vegan or be a carnivore or be whatever when I literally have no clue about their body whatsoever? So what? I'm basing my judgment against you on what this does for my body when yours is completely different, and the amount of energy that takes and mental capacity that I'm just like wasting on that thought, instead of just going, cool, that works for you. Great. Awesome.
Totally.
On to the next. What's another thing we can talk about to understand each other better? You know?
I think the main takeaway is just like, I really challenge the notion that I love people that want to see the world be a better place. And it may be very easy to argue against what we're saying, which is I can't let that other person just continue to live life the way they're choosing to, because that's hurting people in ways that they don't know, whether it's nepotism or white privilege or you're eating meat, right? There may be a case in certain instances where somebody's lifestyle choices are causing negative consequences in some way. But at the end of the day, if I try to make them feel like a piece of shit for living that way, are they really going to make a positive change?
No.
They're not going to do anything. They're just going to get more entrenched in their position. And so it's like, for me, when I started learning about the benefits of like a plant-based lifestyle and like our factory farming system and the impact on the environment and how animals are treated and all that, I was like, man, I don't really like any of that. And I made changes. I still eat meat, I eat dairy, but I completely transformed like where I buy things, my understanding of things. But I didn't go back to my family. Maybe I did for a little bit, but I ended up changing where I didn't shame everybody.
Right.
I would like kind of share what I've learned and this, that, and the other thing. And over time, what I saw was like a whole bunch of people in my family started changing their eating habits. They didn't go vegan, but they started becoming more aware of where they got their things. Some of them may have even experimented with veganism for periods of time. It's because I met them where they were at. Right. And I think I can do the same thing, you know, when it comes to race and inequality and like very big problems. And it's just like, if you're not willing to sit down at the table with somebody and actually try to understand them, and then just share your story without trying to change their story, you'd be surprised at what the impact might be.
Yeah.
So
100%.
I don't know how we got there from boredom, but it's like,
God, I didn't even know where we started. I'm glad you brought it back to boredom.
We started at boredom, and it's like, go do something.
Yeah, inspiration to other people comes by just doing it.
And I guess
instead of
also
trying to tell them. I mean, how many times you like thinking about to our episode 0 of leadership and being a CEO, and like, if I'm just a CEO and I'm sitting here just like drilling you and telling you to do all of these things and do it, how much is that employee really going to want to do it? But if they're inspiring you by getting in the trenches with you and doing the work that they want you to do, that employee is so much more likely to do it. Your family sees you eating healthier, taking care of your body, you're happier, you're more joyful, your skin looks better, you're buff. Like, they're going to be like, oh, maybe I do want that. And they're going to be more inspired to do it.
So let's relate that back to right and wrong, right? So if I think I'm right about something, the odds are that you're probably right about something too. And if I want you, I want to change your opinion about something right now. So I'm going to tell you my opinion and I want you to adopt it. Am I willing to then listen to you about your opinion about how you might disagree with me?
Well, and then not only that, it's like, show me why adopting your way is beneficial. It's like a personal trainer who's not in shape. Well, you're telling me to do all these things, but you're not doing it. You're not in shape. Well, you're telling me veganism is great, but God, you look so frail and I can see your bones through your body. Again, sorry, vegans. I'm just using, that's an easy example.
We can talk about Liver King and go on the opposite.
Yeah, we can go in the opposite direction too. Like, okay, you're telling me a carnivore diet is great, but yet your cholesterol levels are very high. You're a little fat. You're not in shape. You're having a hard time breathing, whatever.
Yeah,
whatever it might be. But are you doing the thing? Like, just show me that what you're doing is a good thing. and then I can make the decision for myself if that's going to work for me or not.
Yeah.
And then you just have to allow people to be.
You gotta allow people
And if
to be.
they don't want to do it, then so be it. That's totally fine.
I used to think that when I was younger, I was like, man, we gotta like make the world a better place, and we just gotta fucking like these things are clearly right, and everybody's got to do them. But
Same.
like, you know, if you just think about yin and yang, there will always be a balance of good
Always.
and bad, both energies, and that doesn't mean that I give up hope on trying to do good in the world and try to be an example of what I think is right. Because the thing about what I consider bad people or evil people is they think they're right too.
Exactly.
There's no evil person in the world who doesn't actually think that they're the hero of the story.
There's only like 1% or 0.5% of people in the world that are actually like evil. Everybody else thinks they're doing the right thing. Like, and if most people would start from that place, like, hey, this person's actually really good, and whatever they're doing, they think is actually good, then I can go like talk to them and understand them and figure it out and figure out why they think this way is good.
Yeah.
Everybody just wants the label and then immediately say, oh, that person is bad.
Yeah. I mean, look, for whoever's listening to this, like odds are you're not like your job is not negotiating with terrorists and stuff like that. So like we're talking about day-to-day life.
Yeah. I mean, that could be a whole nother subject of, well, how do we know what those America claims the terrorists are bad. Do you know that those terrorists are probably saying that America has terrorism?
One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter.
Exactly.
So that is a whole.
But we don't even need to get into that. That's
that we're not going into today. Yeah. I was talking about like you live in the United States, like you're not dealing with rapists every
your
day.
Neighbor
neighbor that pissed you off because their lemon tree dropped into your fucking yard. Like you need to relax.
He's not a bad human being. Yeah.
So appreciate you if you made it this far for listening to episode 1
of the
definitely
Logan and Faiez rant.
Yeah, of the Logan and Faiez rant. We're gonna keep this thing rolling. So hit that like button, subscribe, follow us. Like we're gonna keep doing this.
Yeah.
And drop us a comment if you found anything interesting.
Yeah, cool.
Cool. See you next time.
Until next time.
All right, buddy.